Good morning, friends. Today's talk is on the Mahākāla Sutta. It's not really a sutta. It's a section of the Therigatha, which is in the Khuddaka Nikaya, the fifth book of the Pali Canon. The Therigatha and the Therigatha are poems from awakened monks and nuns of the original Sangha. They're beautiful and insightful, concise, and they contain a great amount of wisdom. I'll be including more of this on my website and talking more about it on these Wednesday talks and even at the Cross River Meditation Center. There's a new section on the website. I think there's 3 or 4 of these on there now. The Therigatha, Theragatha, includes about 264 poems of awakened elder monks, and the Therigatha, Therigatha, is a collection of I think 73 poems of awakened elder nuns, which is, to me, it's that's significant in itself, in that there's so much misinformation about the Buddha's inclusion of women in the original Sangha, and many people, even to this day, claim that he resisted allowing women into the Sangha for gender-based reasons, and that's not true. And many traditions today continue to diminish the importance of women within their own traditions, or continue to exclude women from that. Women, almost from the beginning of the Buddha's teaching career, were significant members of the Sangha with equal status. Something that's not true in most traditions today. And that's really due to a lack of understanding the Buddha's Dhamma, and developing it. There's nothing exclusionary or hierarchical about what the Buddha would teach. And certainly that's true. And just to finish that point, the Buddha resisted having women in the original Sangha simply because of the political and social climate of his day. He was concerned for their safety, that if he allowed them into the Sangha, there'd be such a backlash from the community that they would be hurt and probably killed. And after consideration and from some of his relatives, he finally relented, and it worked out, as can be seen here. Probably next week, this is a poem from the Therigatha, from the senior monks. But I think next week I'll probably have a talk from one of the nuns. Anyway, this talk, as in all of these, all of the Buddhist teachings and the things that are included in the Pali Canon, speak to the heart of the Buddhist teaching. In order to interpret these and appreciate these fully, there has to be a basic understanding of what the Buddha actually taught, and that's founded in dependent origination and expressed in the Four Noble Truths. And everything the Buddha taught for his 45-year teaching career was taught in that context. And to gain very specific insight through refined mindfulness, and that insight is into the 3 marks of existence. And I emphasize this point because of the modern insight movement, and then how the word insight has been incorporated into modern Buddhism. It's taught and presented as a very broad type of insight into every single activity that we're doing. If we're washing the dishes, we should have insight into washing the dishes, or eating a grape. And all of those things are an aspect of having refined mindfulness and being present for what you're occurring. But there's no useful insight in relation to the Buddha's Dhamma, into what it means to wash a dish or eat a grape, or any of the other silly exercises that we create around the word insight. The Buddha taught to gain insight to the three marks of existence, and really nothing else. And those three marks of existence are anicca, impermanence, anatta, the not self characteristic, and the resulting dukkha that results from a misunderstanding of the first two, of the impermanent environment we live in, and perceiving and interacting with that environment from wrong views of self. And that's what the Buddha used the term anatta, a common word during during his time, but in this uncommon way, to simply say that the views that we're holding of a self do not constitute a self in reality. Let go of the views. They don't constitute a self. They're not a self. That's the word. That's why he used the word anatta, or how he used the word anatta. So this poem, and there's some discussion about whether the original writers of these wrote them in verse form. There's some argument that says that they were put in verse form. They were just simple writings, and probably not even writings. They were more like utterances. In other words, there wasn't the use of writing wasn't prevalent during the Buddha's time, although there was writing back then. This was probably added later, and my feeling is it was likely simply things that they said that these senior monks and nuns said, probably in a teaching situation, that were later converted into verse for the inclusion in this section of the Pali Canon. Let me read this particular one, Mahākāla, the corpse. Lay down, come on, puppy. He just loves when I do these things because he gets to be on TV. At least he thinks he does. This is from the Theragatha 216. A strong and determined woman prepares a corpse for cremation. She breaks thigh bones, she breaks arm bones, cracking open the head like a bowl of curds. She sits with the heap beside her. I'm going to stop there. So immediately, lay down. This poem is speaking directly to impermanence and the inevitable end for all human beings, and the graphic depiction of what this woman is doing. And then the concluding line, she sits next to the heap in a non-reactive manner, is what they're trying to portray, to simply say and point out, much like in the Bahia Sutta, this is the end for all of us. And so if this is the end for all of us, and none of us can know when that end comes, we should take to the Dhamma immediately, because the greatest opportunity in any human life is the opportunity to awaken. Let me continue. Those rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths, foolish in their views, return to suffering and stress again and again. In other words, we put ourselves in the position to be prepared for cremation again and again and again. Unless we awaken, we're going to continue to do that. Come on, boats. Lay down. So, understanding truth rooted in wisdom, abandon craving and clinging, and through right effort, determined to never lie with our head cracked open ever again. So, again, that's the end of this little poem. The graphic depiction of what happens to all of us, whether we end up being cremated at the end of our life, or traditional burial. And if you want to look at the graphic depiction of that, you can read the Satipatthana Sutta or the Anapanasati Sutta, where the Buddha goes into detail about what happens to a decomposing body. There's great lessons to understood. One is to realize that this thing that we cling to as us and hope to present to the world for most people, in the most glamorous and enticing way, is something that is prone to decay, to rot, and to eventually disintegrate completely, or in this case, to be broken up unceremoniously with our heads cracked open and our brains leaking out. in preparation for being burnt. And this was not a sacred ritual. This is something else that people misunderstand about this. It was simply the most expedient way to dispose of a body. They didn't have to dig a hole. They didn't have to build a box. They simply broke the human body up, and piled it up into a heap to make it easy to burn away. And this relates also directly to the five clinging aggregates, which are also known as the five khandas, Khanda or Dha, depending on the spelling, which translates loosely to a heap. And so the five skandhas, or the five clinging aggregates, is a term the Buddha used to describe the ongoing process, the ongoing personal experience of suffering. And he described that as the heap, to point out that no matter how enamored we are with ourselves and our body and our position in the world, every one of us is going to end up as a heap next to someone preparing us for cremation, or in most in burial situations, we're going to end up being put in a box and buried in the ground. It's the same for every one of us. So the important point of this, that what this senior monk is saying, what he's realized, and this is exactly what the Buddha told Bahia, is to take to the Dhamma and awaken, because none of us know when we're going to end up in that position. But what we can know is the true nature of reality, and that's developed through wholehearted engagement with the Eightfold Path as the Buddha taught. After many, many years, one of these days I'll think about exactly how long ago it was that I started engaging in Buddhism, meaning modern Buddhism, but it's well over 35 years ago now. The Eightfold Path that the Buddha taught originally, excluding all the accommodations and adaptations and embellishments that have made to that original Eightfold Path, is the only path that brings direct insight to the three marks of existence. There's no distraction within the Eightfold Path that would take one away from gaining that insight. And it is the most important insight, as is seen here. If we truly understand the nature of impermanence, if we truly understand the nature of anatta, the not self characteristic, then we will truly understand the nature of our own contributions to the third mark of existence, to dukkha. And that is how the Buddha described an awakened human being from the point of view of right view. He said that right view, fully developed, profound right view, awakened right view, understands at the most subtle levels the nature of suffering. That view understands the nature of living life from the point of view of wrong view and the stress and suffering that ensues. And that view, having developed that view, that person has abandoned all those wrong views and awakened. So I think that's far enough for today. Thank you for listening. If you find benefit from this talk, please consider a donation at becoming-buddha.com. Thank you. Peace.